Hello again, everyone. This is Louis Setti speaking as the Blue Ridge Reporter on a very snowy Sunday evening of February 19th, 2012 here in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where some 6 to 10 inches of snow is now falling, depending on where you are along these mountains. The story that I'm reporting today involves Lifeway Christian bookstores, which announced that it is pulling from its shelves a magazine called Gospel Today magazine because it features a front page story about so-called female pastors. Now, Christian bookstores, Lifeway Christian bookstores, is run by the Southern Baptist Convention, a very significant politically noteworthy grouping of churches under that umbrella name, the Southern Baptist Convention. And by the way, there is a Lifeway Christian bookstore not far from where I live, and I've been there myself. The article is entitled "Breaking the Glass Ceiling, Female Pastors," and it features 5 so-called female pastors. And talks about their struggles. And it's interesting that certain political terms, or terms often associated with political activities, are used in this article about the female pastors. And one of them is that the story in the magazine talked about their struggles, connoting that they're working against some unfair, oppressive regime, and they're struggling for their right place, often denied what they should have, and unrecognized in their virtue for persisting in their efforts to be considered and accepted as female pastors. The article also uses the phrase "the glass ceiling," which is another phrase that you find and has a political connotation, but also applied often to the business world, where the implication is that the glass ceiling is arbitrarily created, designed to keep women out of certain positions, top positions. It's a glass ceiling because you can't really see it, but yet it's there because women just can't rise to that position they want to enjoy. And so glass ceiling is the metaphor that's used and is applied to the so-called struggles of these so-called female pastors in their pursuits. In the year 2000, the Southern Baptist Convention revised its statement of faith. Statement of faith, by the way, for those who are not Christians, is a written explanation of the positions that a particular denomination takes on various issues. Now, this is significant. In 2000, the Southern Baptist Convention revised its statement of faith to say that men only may be pastors. Now, that's an interesting revision. Why would that revision be made? Because since the time of Christ, no one ever considered that women would be pastors. The scriptures are so very clear about the fact that God would have men only as pastors. Having a revision of the statement of faith to say only men may be pastors is like revising some standards of information, let's say in the airline industry, that wings are for flying, or in the maritime industry that rudders are for steering, or in agriculture shovels are for digging. These were self-evident facts. You wouldn't incorporate them into any written doctrine about those business and professional pursuits, because everybody knew wings were for flying, rudders were steering, and shovels were for digging. And everybody knew that men were for being pastors, not women. Why? Because men were taller, stronger, and could dominate women. And if they decided to get in the pulpit, they would wrestle them out and pin them on the floor? Or was there something in the scripture? That is to say, was it simply some kind of cultural phenomenon that resulted in, for 2,000 years basically, only men being pastors, ordained leaders of churches? Well, the scripture is quite clear, and the article recites the scriptures regarding what it says on that topic, but for your benefit, to show that there is a scriptural basis for this, it's found in the book of Titus in the New Testament, chapter 1, and the setting is the Apostle Paul has been on various missionary activities from the Jerusalem area throughout the Mediterranean, moving westward in most cases. He had done much work in the area around Greece, and in fact he had done some work on the island of Crete, which is in the Mediterranean near Greece. He had an associate there, a man named Titus. This letter, preserved by the ordained grace of God, we now have to review in our Bibles. And this letter was sent to Titus by the apostle, who was an authority over Titus, telling Titus in turn what to do to create other subordinate authorities in these new churches. And so the critical clause is this. Paul writes to Titus, "For this cause left I thee in Crete, that thou shouldest set in order the things that are wanting." In more contemporary English, "For this reason I left you in Crete, that you should take care of things that need to be done, things that are yet to be done." And the verse continues regarding those things to be done, "And ordain elders in every city as I had appointed thee, as I told you to do." And elders, by the way, are pastors. That's the overarching term for men who occupy that position. And Paul reminds Timothy the kind of men that he needs to appoint as elders. It is a criterion for being an elder. And Paul wrote, verse 6, "If any be blameless, the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of riot or being unruly." If any be blameless, husband of one wife. It's clear then that a man would be a husband, and therefore the pastoral role within the umbrella of an elder would be reserved for a man, unless of course Scripture is talking about two lesbians being so-called married and one playing the role of a husband. Then the pastor could be a woman. But of course, the Scripture is not speaking in those terms, because the Scripture says in other places quite profoundly that homosexuals, persistent homosexual practitioners, and lesbian practitioners surely will not go into their eternal reward in heaven, because they are defiant against the teachings of Christ. So that's the situation, that's the theology involved, and for those who are not Christians, they might think, well, why are we excluding women? I mean, it just doesn't seem fair to exclude women. You know, women can do a lot of things. Why can't they be pastors? Well, I'm going to pick up with this, so I don't have to rush through this topic, in the next presentation. Thank you very much. This is Louis Setti, speaking as the Blue Ridge Reporter.